Huh?
You'll be fine. Let share with you. Don't try to buy into Dennis whatever.
Buying one.
Is it online? Maybe you come in like 5.
Check if the
20, whatever. Just
right. Hi, Melvin.
Hello, how you doing,
Not
Marverine?
too
How you
bad. How
doing?
are you?
Yeah, good. Ready.
Uh,
Ready.
Finally, we connected.
Yeah, just had a little bit of trouble. I had to reboot my machine, so all good though.
But you managed to connect okay.
Yeah, absolutely fine. Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you okay.
Fabulous.
So I think we got Mariam also on the call. Let me ask her to join. Just 2
Great.
minutes and then we kick off.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, ready to go.
Where are you joining from?
I'm from Birmingham in the Midlands, the second
Okay.
city of
Yeah.
Britain. Yeah, the best city in the world.
Very, very enthusiastic. Nice. Yeah. But I hope everything is going well.
Yeah, do you know, it's really funny what's happened today. Matt Hancock had a meeting with our local council because we've had some spikes. The city's had some spikes in COVID-19, so the city is on a national watch list.
Yeah.
So we are praying we don't have to go into a local lockdown.
Yeah, I think there was a few speculation since last week in Dadri and some areas that people are not observing their social distance.
Right? Yeah, it's a little bit scary, the snooze. Yeah. A little bit scary. Someone's saying they can't hear properly because the volume's too low. I'll turn my own sound up.
Hi, Benedict. Can you hear us? Hello.
Perfectly, yes.
Oh, okay.
Am I muted? Oh, no.
No, we can hear you.
Great.
Okay, I think we go over 30 people. Today we have around 100 people registered to join, so we are expecting a good number. But in the interest of time, probably we go Mariam also on the, I don't know, let me ask her to. I think in the interest of time, probably let's just kick off. And I've just chatted the rest of the speaker to let me know. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
So welcome everyone to One Africa Network discussion panel on media and the BAME community in the UK, looking at how we can change the narrative. So this is part of our weekly discussion that we've been hosting since May as part of the response to COVID-19, supporting the BME communities to help them navigate the situation, reposition, adapt, pivot, and also prepare for recovery and the growth in the new normal, the new economy. So we are also supported by Innovate UK as part of the government initiatives to respond to COVID-19 impact to the economy and the society. So these are some of the discussion we host every day. Today, I'm your host. My name is Eugene. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of SSG Consulting. I'm also the director for One Africa Network, chair for African Business Chamber based in Birmingham, and I'm supported by my partner who's be looking at some of the Q&A question and the discussion. Dennis Aguma, he's a lecturer at Birmingham City University and also a co-chair for One Africa Network. So before we deep dive into the discussion, I just give a bit of introduction about One Africa for those who are on the listening to us and know where about it. So One Africa Network is a membership-based social development organization that focuses on the issues that affect Black and African businesses, entrepreneurs, and professionals in the UK. So we are mainly committed to advancing entrepreneurship, innovation, inclusiveness, and sustainable economic growth through various activities such as discussion panel, training, research, and other activities we are doing. So our mission is to connect, inspire, empower, and celebrate the activities and the story and the work being done by our members, mainly from the BME community. So these are some of the things we do: research, advocacy, consulting, and capacity development in the various areas, such as policy, economy, and other sectors like STEM, technology, creative, and culture. So we engage people in different ways through discussion panels, networking, conferences. We're now hosting live discussion because of COVID-19 restriction, but hopefully once the situation improves, we will go back to hosting live events and other things like business growth masterclass and social celebration and award. This year we were hoping to launch our One Africa Award. However, we've been disrupted by COVID-19, so probably we might have to push it back for next year. It's part of showcasing and celebrating some of the success story, innovation, and the good work being done by our community. So we've been fortunate to welcome many speakers. These are some of them. I think over 1 year, we've welcomed over around 300 diverse experts, speakers, and business leaders, entrepreneurs, academia to share their experience and some of the key best practice with our community to help them rethink and adopt best skills. And I'm sure you've seen some of them, these ones. Yeah. So today the discussion is about the media and the BAME community in the UK, and the topic we've prepared today. We have a few areas that we're hoping to go through and joined by some of the speakers we have on the line. We'll be looking at some of these, but before I go through, I'll probably just welcome our speaker. So the first we have Melvin Coe. She is a very successful journalist and a media expert, has worked in many areas within the TV media, but I'll give her the opportunity to introduce herself because I've realized she has a very extensive CV, and she's also a visiting director for journalism at Birmingham City University, and she's doing other things. And unfortunately, Lisa is unable to join us today. She just been called this morning to cover an emerging story. As you know, media is always to respond to emerging topics, so she is unable to join us. Mariam is on the line. I don't know if she can hear us. I've tried to engage her, but probably she's trying to connect. If she can hear, Mariam, can you hear us? No, sir. I'll send her a message just to make sure she's connecting. Okay. Thirdly, we have Benedict Colombo. I hope I sounded it right. She's a managing director and executive producer for Pinned Media. So she's also have another extensive work in the media industry, journalism, and also, so she also give her an opportunity. And finally, we'll be joined by Elizabeth, who's just running RED. Also, she has also a huge experience in media coverage and mainly focusing on the BME stories and PRs. So for us to kick off, I'll probably give 2-3 minutes for the speakers to introduce themselves and give us a bit of background in terms of their media history and some of the work they are doing. And if also you can help us to just maybe answer the first question: how do you think the COVID-19 has transformed the industry and the landscape, including the work you are doing? Probably if I start with Melvin, welcome, and probably take the stage, introduce yourself.
Thank you very much indeed. Good evening, everyone. Lovely to join you, and also feeling honoured to join One Africa Network's kind of list of hundreds of speakers that you've been bringing to audiences over the year. So I'm Marvarine Cole, bit of an unusual name, Marvarine. It rhymes with margarine, the stuff you used to spread on your bread back in the day. Okay, I'm of Jamaican heritage, so Marvarine is a Jamaican name. Brummy born and bred. I'll just tell you the sort of the things that I do. My current job is I am Director of Undergraduate Journalism at Birmingham City University. So there I am responsible for the development and teaching of 4 separate BA Honours journalism degree courses, which were launched a couple of years ago. I've got a small team of staff. We've probably got around 200 students across the 3 years, and that is it's an all-consuming job, right? And how did I get to that job? I've got a lot of skin in the game, as they say in the media. My media career spans, I think it's 32 years now. The last 17 of those have been a journalist and broadcaster. So I was trained as a television and radio journalist. I've worked for all the local news outlets that you know and have probably watched. So ITV Central News is where I started, did my training as a trainee TV reporter. BBC Midlands Today, I worked there as a reporter, a presenter on BBC Radio WM, newsreader, news desk reporter, going out, covering all kinds of different stories. Written news stories for CFAX. Remember CFAX teletext? That was me. I started out doing some writing for that as well. And then, so I've worked for all the local news outlets, and then I was headhunted by Sky News. So I went to work in London. So I worked in London for the best part of 10 years, worked as a news anchor for Sky News, newsreader for Channel 5 News, managing teams of video journalists. And more recently, you might have heard my documentary, Black Girls Don't Cry. That was on Radio 4 a couple of years ago. It was award-winning, first time that BBC Radio 4 would ever broadcast a documentary that I produced and presented, delving into the experiences of the mental health experiences of Black women, featuring 2 main contributors from Birmingham. So that's my experience of journalism and the world of media. So wanting to come to the first question, how has COVID-19 transformed the media landscape? It's done a lot of damage to the media landscape, and kind of unavoidable damage, I would say. You only have to look at the long list of job losses and the job cuts that have been happening, particularly in journalism. I'm just compiling that list because I'm actually writing a State of the Nation lecture for my final year students that I'm going to be teaching starting from next month. And in a way, it's quite frightening because I'm compiling this list and I'm teaching students who this time next year will be graduating and trying to go out into that world of journalism. And there are job cuts left, right and centre. 450 jobs being cut at the BBC, thousands cut across the Reach network. The Reach network, the publishers who publish, Birmingham Live, the kind of online paper in Stoke, lots and lots of local newspapers cut because of COVID-19, because brands have been losing money because we've had a huge lockdown. Brands are losing money because customers aren't coming in, so they're not making profits, they're not able to put that into advertising, so they're not paying the news outlets advertising. Guardian's losing money, Guardian are cutting jobs, a lot of the industry is being devastated. It also is having an impact on, of course, the way that journalists do their job. Usually we'd be out and about interviewing people up and down, at events, meeting people face to face, and being quite close up with people. Obviously, you'll have watched your television screens and seen lots of reporters social distancing, holding a big boom stick, right, with that's 2-3 meters long, stretching to meet the voice of whoever they're recording. And you'll see, obviously, as we are sitting here having a Zoom conversation, lots of journalists are having to interview people through the computer screens and edit that into their material. Lots of journalists having to work from home. So there's been a big shift in what's happening in terms of the media. just wondering if you wanted me to go on to kind of the next set of the next questions, Eugene. Is it, you know, talking about the kind of.
Let me just go around, do a quick round robin
Sure.
introduction, and then we can deep dive.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that extensive introduction. We really look forward to learn from you. 30 years of experience is quite broad, and
It's long.
there's quite a lot of things to share, and some of the challenges you've been facing as part of the COVID-19, which I think has transformed every industry, every life. And the media has been, especially the media has been at the forefront in reporting the story, how the things are moving, the trends, and so media is always important in everything. If I go to Benedict, welcome, and probably also if you can also introduce yourself and give us a bit of a brief about your background, some of the things you've been doing in the media industry and the journalism.
Hi, my background is in journalism, and it's sort of entangled. I mean, it's sort of interlinked with producing, I think, for the past 2 years. But I would say for the past 7 years, it's mainly just been journalism. I started off in print, and I still am with New African Woman magazine. So empowerment and a lifestyle magazine, and then a bit of politics with the New African. And through print, for some reason, I sort of fell in love with digital. So I sort of managed the digital aspect of a print magazine. And up until recently, I would say April, I was with the BBC in terms of with BBC News. I was working with BBC News, World Service and Sport on their audience engagement department, their digital audience engagement. So it's about all the online platform for those BBC brands. Prior to that, I've done some work, some reporting work for ITV, and I'm currently doing some work with DW, the German national media. I have Pin Africa, which I founded 3 years ago. It's a short form video channel. So we do social videos where we profile Africans in the diaspora as well as in the continent who are making great strides. It's 3 to 4 minute videos. It's very digital. It's mobile first type content because we want to reach the audience where they are and at most convenient time, and it's mobile for this time and era. And I also have Pin Media, which is a production company, which is more about service-based, and we're currently working with a broadcaster to sort of produce content, and we're currently involved in some commission round for factual content to come for mainly British broadcasters and media. I don't know if that's given you enough background. I can't stretch myself enough.
Just to answer the first question, how has COVID-19 transformed your work? I can hear you've been doing quite a lot of amazing work. How has it kept the work you do?
I think what's been mentioned already is the cuts and the impact that it's had on journalism in terms of jobs and finance. But as a person who's very digital orientated and digital first, a lot of the things that's happening now is things I've always used or ways I've always worked in. So I've kind of seen a silver lining. I've managed to see how innovative and creative journalists and people in the media are getting so that the public could stay well informed. So a lot of Zoom has been very useful for the industry, but it does mean that journalists and people in the media had to put on a different hat and find solutions on how they can carry out their jobs within this difficult times. And I think I've seen some pretty amazing stuff, things that we've never thought before. I mean, I've seen stories where it would cost £700 to produce, well, a minimum, because a journalist will have to fly somewhere and get the story done. But you're able to even accumulate more or make more content because we're making better use of technology. And for me, as much as it's impacted us financially and it's restricted us in terms of movement, but it has sort of made us grow and think more creatively, because of, you know, the restrictions it has imposed. So there's so much bad to it, but at the same time, it's taken us to a different space, and it's allowed us to think differently. And a lot more people are thinking outside the box.
Thank you, Benedict. It looks like I just lost Mariam. Mariam, can you hear us? Oh, okay, you're still there. Hello, can you hear?
Hi, yes.
Oh, hi. Oh, okay, I thought we lost you. Welcome, and if also if you can quickly do a quick introduction in terms of some of the work you've been doing in the media and journalism, and a bit of background, and if you can help us to answer the first question, how COVID-19 has affected your industry or your work or transformed in the last few months.
Yes, well, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to be a panelist along with Marverine and Benedict. It's so lovely to meet you guys and to be having this conversation. I'm super excited. So I'm actually freelance. I freelanced for the past, and I feel like I've had the youngest career in journalism and in media from everyone here. I've been freelancing as at first as a producer for the BBC World Service, and then as a journalist and a presenter, again with different shows with the BBC World Service, and now most recently as a producer with CNN. And so that's me in a nutshell. That's my introduction. It's been almost 2 years now that I've been in journalism, but before that I was in the field of development. So I just kind of made a career shift and switched to media. I've had my whole journalism career in the UK, and the second year of it has been COVID. And I think everything has been said in terms of how COVID has affected the world of media and journalism, from job cuts and financial cuts, and making it, I guess if you're more of a field producer or a field journalist, making the kind of media you make is more restricted to Zoom interviews. But then, yeah, the plus side being that you'd have to be more creative. And I found myself being pushed and to think outside the box and think how I can cover a story in a more exciting way without being able to go to places. And I found that it's a challenge, but it's not that much of a challenge, and it's exciting and it's fun and it's great to do. Me personally, as a person, COVID affected my ability to switch from freelance to a fixed contract journalist at a time when it looked like that was on the table, that had to be taken away, because everywhere, all the big news, all the news agencies, even small ones, currently have hiring freezes, and probably a lot of other media institutions, from creative studios or creative agencies to marketing agencies, and of course news agencies. A lot of places have hiring freezes. So a lot of the jobs that I was up for in about February, March all fell through, and that affected my migration, that affected from one organization to another, that affected who I could freelance with and what I could do. But then it pushed me again to reevaluate what really matters to me in journalism, and who matters to organizations. Who matters to organizations, who matters to news agencies, who matters to different departments, different TV, radio, and digital shows, and why they matter, and if that's going to bring accurate and exciting news to audiences. And what I'm touching on here is the other key topic of this conversation is race and ethnicity and your background, your ethnic racial background in journalism, and how especially in the UK and especially at the news agency I worked for, currently freelance for frequently the BBC, how being a Black woman, a young Black woman, an African woman in the BBC World Service, whether it's COVID or not COVID times, your talent, your input, your cultural knowledge and access and insight is needed and valued, but you as a person won't be valued. So if they could extract the stories from you and do without you, they will, and then just push you to the curb. And that was slightly apparent to me before COVID, and then COVID just made it even more apparent. So I'm veering into other things there, but that's definitely, I mean, COVID, I think there are a lot of problems going on with a lot of people in many aspects of life. And I think COVID exacerbated that, as pandemics or natural disasters, as crises do. So for me, COVID made it very apparent to me that the organization that I was freelancing with was willing to value me insofar as they were willing to value they wanted to take my work and my ideas and my background and everything I could bring to the table and then use it without giving me the proper value that me as a human being and as a journalist needed to do my job. So yeah, that's a bit about my experience so far this year working in the media during COVID as an African woman.
Thank you, Mariam. Hopefully we'll come back to you to learn more about some of those things you just mentioned and get to hear more stories about. So if I go back to Melvin, probably now to help answer some of the other questions we have on the list. I don't know how, Melvin, you want to answer them. Probably help us to kind of help us define some of the various form of media biases or representation. I think over your 30 years of experience, what have you seen? Is it true? Is there any media biases, misrepresentation?
There sure is.
I'm not a journalist, so I don't know. That's why I've invited experts like you to ask this and this.
I hope you know I was being playful there, Eugene. And Mariam, I totally, you know, there were a lot of things you were saying, and I was just like, yes. I appreciate where you're coming from in terms of, you know, the BBC sometimes likes to take your idea and send it off for someone else to do and what have you, and that is there are a lot of problems like that, I believe, and that I know of. Across our media industries. In terms of media bias, well, you know, we all know the kind of inherent partisan nature of our newspapers. You know, it's something that I have to teach my students to understand and acknowledge and be wary of when they are looking at various newspapers. You know, the stance that the Daily Mail, the Daily Telegraph, the Daily Express, the Sun, the Times take is right wing. You know, and you've got to take that into account when you're seeing some of those headlines and those stories and the slant that they are focused on, you know, appreciate that. It's interesting though, you know, our broadcast media used to be much more, you know, it used to have spaces. It used to have spaces for Black African, Black Caribbean, Asian people. You know, there were dedicated television program units back in the 80s that, you know, that brought us, you know, the shows like The Real McCoy and A-Force and Blouse and Skirt, and Black Britain, you know, a weekly documentary series that focused on, you know, our experiences, the diaspora's experiences in this country. But then those units were disbanded, and there was a promise of, you know, integrating us into the mainstream kind of television experiences, and so, you know, it's only really because of well, you might notice, you know, Black Lives Matter has instigated changes. It's put a rocket in the back pocket of many of the broadcasters, saying, you know, making all sorts of different pledges, You know, Benedict, you all know about the Channel 4 BAME-led Indies Accelerator Scheme. Big up to that, right? Channel 4, you know, got up off their backside and said, we need to do better. We need to, we want to work with Black-led independent production companies to make our content. And they went all out with, you know, meeting us all online and whatever, and asking us to pitch, etc., etc. They're looking for more people to front programs and all the rest of it. It's all great. You know, BBC said they're going to invest £100 million. £100 million, but then they cut local news jobs. You know, it's kind of like you know, but you know, so the broadcasters are doing something. It's great, but for me, it does feel in some ways too little, too late. Having seen what the industry's been like over the years, you know, from when I was a kid, working in those places for work experience. I think for younger audiences, it's probably way too late, because, you know, the Director General of the BBC himself has said, you know, several times how concerned they are that, you know, younger audiences aren't with the BBC. They're not interested, right? The audiences are being shed left, right and centre, no matter what they do, because they left it too late. And it's the same with Black, Asian and minority ethnic audiences. We're gone from traditional media in many ways. But then, you know, like I said, I think the financial boost, you know, in the broadcasters are looking to hire more commissioners, more people who are going to be in power, more people who are going to make programs, more people who are going to set the agendas. That's great, because it means, you know, we're going to get a piece of the pie. But I think there's still a long way to go in terms of improving media representation. I think, you know, millennials and Gen Zs are absolutely killing it on social media. You know, there are people like ZZ Mills, you know, Sideman just stepped away from the BBC because he's got 250,000 followers on his Instagram, right? He's got his own community, he's got his own audience. He can take that possibly, you know, wherever he wants to, hopefully. You know, you've got brilliant independent platforms. You know, Benedict, you talk about the ones that you work for: New Woman, New African Woman magazine, Black Ballad, Gal Down, Melon Mag, Phoenix newspaper right here in Birmingham, right? That's a long-standing newspaper founded and run by a Black woman. You know, there are outlets out there, and I think, you know, we need to give them our support. You know, we're talking Black-owned. We got to support our Black-owned, Black-run media. My view, I'll stop talking, but my view is, yes, you know, having been in those organisations, in the BBC, in ITV, in Sky News, in 5 News, it's great to be in there to try and work against, you know, to try and push the door on the changing media narratives. But I'm also a massive believer in fostering, nurturing and supporting our Black British media.
Thank you, Melvin. If probably before I leave you, if I ask you the second, third question, if you believe there's a bit of biases in the media industry, how can we decolonize the industry and probably accelerate diversity and inclusion in the journalism?
In journalism, yeah, I mean, journalism's got a big problem. You know, only 0.2% of journalists in this country, jobbing journalists in this country, are Black. You know, of the 30,000 or so jobbing journalists, that's from a survey from the Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism in 2016. You know, and the chances of journalists getting jobs is even tougher. The National Council for the Training of Journalists did a survey in 2017. You know, when a Black journalist and a white journalist comes out of a journalism school, right, a degree course, 8% of those Black students qualified will get a job in their first 6 months, compared to 26% of white journalists, right? So it's hard to get a job. There's a small number of us in there, you know, we're in the profession when we're there. What needs to happen? I think it might sound radical, I don't think it is. I think it's all about our independent media, because, like I said, you know, the strides that now broadcasters and and some of the spaces are making to include us is not enough, right? It's not enough. And there are great schemes. You know, I'm not knocking the schemes that are there, because you know, the NCTJ has a journalism diversity bursary. You know, I've shortlisted applicants for that bursary for maybe the last 5-10 years, right? It's a great way of, if you want to study journalism but you haven't got the funds, you know, you might get your fees paid and whatever, and that's a pot that's been created by like lots of the main newspaper groups, and there are all sorts of schemes and what have you. But then, you know, you only have to look at how organisations like the BBC or BBC News have treated Black audiences around the N-word. You know, 20,000 people complained about the use of that N-word. The BBC said, nah, it's acceptable. Right? and then the Director General goes, oh, we do make mistakes sometimes. We'll do better. You know, like, and so, you know, my view is independent media. It's not easy to be an independent media company. We know all the challenges around lack of ad revenue, you know, how to monetize the media that you're creating. There are all sorts of new kind of, everybody's trying different models. You know, Black Ballad and Galdem have got subscription models. All sorts of independent media are having subscription models, or you pay per site. I think the key is in, you know, if we as a people, as a diaspora, want to ensure sustainability of our media, you know, our independent media, as hard as it might sound, we're going to have to lobby the government, because the government need to invest in news media. They're not investing in news media at the moment. They know there's a problem. There was a big review last year, the Cairn Cross review. There were lots of recommendations from it. The government have funded a news pilot for, you know, around innovations in public interest news. They're promising to do some more, and they realise that diversity in the media is also not what it should be. So, you know, we should be looking to lobby them to see what they're going to do to support independent media that exists and new growing media. And also, we've got to look at access to investment, because, you know, that's potentially, you know, another way that media can grow. You know, as long as outlets have got good audience engagement and good support, and people are coming to the content, they're going to the content that's produced by our independent media, then that means, you know, they can garner investment, you know, and try and get angel investors on board to boost sustainability. But I don't think that much is going to change, or there's going to be much improvement with the snail-like pace that is happening with our major news organisations, media organisations. That's me being diplomatic, snail-like.
No, you are right. I think BBC especially BBC is facing quite a lot of challenges, new competition, free media in the digital space, and I think the government there's also been a public outcry about TV license and all those, comparing to the content you get out of BBC. Quite a lot of public feel like probably should they pay, should they be paid? There's been quite a lot of, and I think the government, there was a review, I think, of the TV license, what to do with it. So BBC, I think, is facing. If I go to Benedict and Mariam, Benedict, do you agree with some of the Marvin experience? Do you agree with his her perspective in terms of media, in terms of biases and misrepresentation? Do you agree that much needs to be done to enhance diversity and inclusion?
Yes, I think every single person, including yourself, know it's a yes.
I'm not a journalist, so I don't know.
Well, you watch the TV. I mean, every newsroom I've ever worked in, I've always been the only Black person and the only ethnic minority. The only time I've ever seen diversity, and I've seen newsrooms that's colourful, which is I would say it's level 5 at BBC Broadcasting House, and that's World Service, because you've got people from that from those countries, with people from the country's backgrounds telling their own stories to a certain extent. But even within the BBC, I think you get to see a bit more diversity on the 8th floor as well, because there's BBC One Extra radio. So you've got young, urban music, genres going on there. So you get young, Black people walking around. That was my observation being in the company. And because of the department I worked in, I didn't get to really work with people who looks like me. So yes, in that sense, in terms of diversifying the newsrooms, there needs to be change in that, especially for those people who want to be in those spaces. I'm no longer in the stage of my career where I want to occupy those kind of spaces. And I've been there, I've experienced there, and it's not my cup of tea, not anymore anyway. But I think for those who are coming and want to sort of do journalism and they want to do it for big organizations, then a lot of work. And also it's just, there's more nuance and with the stories, if it's actually coming from the actual people, if it's actually somebody talking about themselves or people they know really well, then you just get authenticity. I mean, authenticity is one thing you just can't fake. And when it's fake, we see it and we call it out straight away. And why can't you just pay for authenticity? You know what I mean? Just pay the people to tell their own stories. It's just that straightforward. It's 2 steps, Black person, Black story, and you get the full story. And then there's that thing about, I would say what Mavarine was talking about, independent media. And that's what prompted me to have my own platforms, is because when a lot of these organizations were created, it wasn't with us in mind anyway. The BBC is, I think, 100 years old, or probably, like, it was not with Black people and Asian people in mind. And so we can try to change them, you know, from the inside out, but there's just so much you can do with making noise and protesting. And sometimes protesting can get very tiring. And there's nothing that those organizations are doing that can't be done outside of them. Like literally, those people who are protesting are bringing in their skills, and you can take your skills elsewhere and make it for yourself. So that's one element of it. But then having your own independent Black media is difficult. And this is something that's within our own community. There's 2 parts to it. There's the part where you're not going to be taken as seriously by non-Black folks, because you are not the mainstream yet, especially if you haven't expanded enough. So the respect is not yet there. There's people who I've been in calls with, or in conference calls with, or meetings where I've seen their products and I produce 10 times more, but it's the color of my skin, it's my background, it's not going to be taken as serious. And then you go to our own people, we don't, you know, it sounds better when it's coming from a white person mentality, and we still have that within us ourselves. So a lot of the times we hear Black people say, or Africans say, oh, we need to read more, but we also need to consume our own more. It's not just about, you know, putting the stuff out there. Yes, we can create, but we need to be our own consumers. And I feel like we're not. And going back to the part about not being taken serious, I think what I've realized is when you have the word Africa or you have the word Black to your brand, it's somehow, some way devalued straight away. And I think a prime example is New African Woman is a very credible magazine and media outlet. We've interviewed a lot of first ladies of Africa. We've had covers for the head of UN Women, the secretary, the deputy secretary general of the UN. You know, it's like really high level women who are the best in architecture around Africa. Chimamanda Ngozi was on our cover. Like we've done that. But I remember during the shoot that we had with her, before her, another magazine, a UK magazine, a very well-known magazine, was having their interview before us. And her PR agent at the time value their time. Even though our times were slotted and when we could speak to Chimamanda, we were like being pushed to the side because we were new African women, and not knowing that actually our demographic and our following is literally outside of London and outside of the UK. And it's actually African women who aspire to be just like her will be reading. So the PR agent didn't even understand that we had a better audience for Chimamanda at that time, but they allowed a very small UK known magazine to take over and treated them better and gave them more time and gave them more treatment because of what our title meant. And maybe she didn't, you know, I could say, research us enough, because the journalist who was working on the story had interviewed Chimamanda before. So they kind of had that relationship where she was just like, oh, if it's them, I want to speak to them, you know? And I get that with a lot of things, even a lot of other Black artists, whether it's other Black authors, when their PR is not Black, and I'm coming in with Pin Africa, I'm coming in with New African Woman, you get there, we're not doing press, you know? We're not currently giving out interviews, we're not, because of the name that it carries. And it just means, I mean, for us is, where is the Black PRs? Why don't we have enough of, you know, Black people giving us high profile names? And why aren't we consuming and rating ourselves as much? And another example would be a model. She's a very high profile model and has, you know, walked down the runway for a lot of the high-end luxury designer wear and brands. And we did a cover with her, and we were still working on the cover, and our cover came out, and we sent her everything, and she was like, oh yeah, oh, on her Instagram, a little shout out, yeah, I also made a cover for this. But then when Elle did a cover, and it wasn't even as good, it was posted everywhere. Oh my God, I made it to Elle, you know, and we spent a lot of money doing that photo shoot, you know, and it was a great interview, but it was because I've just been published by an African, and now I've made it to Elle magazine or Vogue or whatever it is. So it's like, how much do we appreciate ourselves? We can push for independent African media, but how proud are Africans of their own? You know, and that seems to be an issue. So it's like, it's everywhere. It's within ourselves and it's outside of us. And I don't have the answers, unfortunately. My own answer is I'm out there doing it for myself. And I work with a lot of women, talented women, whether they are videographers for Pin Africa or Pin Media. I work with a lot of other Black people, and I work with a lot of non-Blacks as well. But as a Black person, I could naturally see the talent through a Black person. I can naturally see how good a Black person can tell a story, and allow them to tell their own stories. But that's the only way we can. I mean, I think it's about, if you want to change the world, you have to change yourself first. And I think it's about us taking the initiative individually, and then it becomes a collective thing, you know? But we really can't wait for anybody else to do it at all. And when you go back to bias, and I was in about telling stories, I think one thing I learned from print is wording, right? It's just about how we speak about ourselves and the kind of words we use. And a lot of the time when I'm writing or I'm filming or I'm interviewing, I am very careful about the kind of language I use. Whether it's about ourselves, our narrative, our history, you know, we just have to be careful on how we go about the way we tell our stories, especially the type of words we use on ourselves.
You are right. I think you've raised a very, very good points. And one of the key points that has been coming through our discussion is how Black and African, we don't patronize or appreciate our own communities' activities, not just in the media, even in other sectors of economy. We find Black or African do not patronize or want to buy goods or products from their own peers or whatever, and they tend to devaluate it. So it's something that we need to address, and I'm hoping this crisis and some of the discussion will make people to rethink again, like other society, the way they support each other. Of course, our community, Black and African community, for it to be stronger, we need to support each other, work collaborative, and value ourselves first, because in life, if you don't value yourself, nobody else will value you. So, and another good point you mentioned about fake news. I think this is one of the things Donald Trump has been highly commended for, raising fake news. Before Donald Trump, there was quite a lot of fake news in the media, but people never paid attention. But when he raised it and started attacking some media for manipulating the news because of maybe political agenda, so now it starts playing people's mind to scrutinize some of the things we see. And I'm sure maybe I think Mervyn has touched on it about Black Lives Matters. We've seen different stories. Sometimes you question which one is the real story. You look at some of the printed media, you see where the information has been either manipulated, like certain things you raise a bit of alarm. Mariam, I don't know what you are taught. Do you agree, Benedict? Do you agree, Melvin? What's your experience? How do you see biasism in the media or misrepresentation? What can we do to change this narrative? Since you are the youngest and the future, you have the more power to shape the future you want to see.
Well, I will say definitely everything they both said, I 100% agree with. Deeply resonates with me. I don't know if you noticed, I was thoroughly nodding through a lot of what you guys were saying because I was just like, preach. Yeah, I mean, definitely bias and discrimination and active opportunity hoarding and active, I would actually say institutional racism is deeply entrenched in every single news agency in the global north, in the West. And then we can go down to to the global south and touch on what Benedict was saying, that even on the continent, there is an internalized self, what's the word I'm looking for? Like I don't want to say self-hate, pardon?
Self-doubt?
Self-doubt, self-discrimination, self-hate, self-identity. No, there's like an actual term for this. There's like an actual political term for this, but it's really just this internalized discrimination towards self. So I'm African, I'm Sierra Leonean, born and raised. I grew up on the continent. I've lived in Ethiopia, I've lived in Sudan, I've lived in Sierra Leone, I've worked in Nigeria, in Ghana, and Senegal and Guinea, and I've worked in the UK. And the journalism industry in the UK, from the 2 years that I've been immersed in it, the active racial institutional racism and racial bias and discrimination really is completely top down. It's in the way the institutions are built. It's in why they are built. It's historical. It's in what they're used for and why they were created. So even, talking about my experience with the BBC World Service, the BBC World Service was created for the BBC colonial government. And, going back to what Benedict was saying about wording, since I was a child, I've been a stickler for wording and how wording is so important. I hate the term colonial powers. What is powerful about going to a land, exploiting people, killing them, and using their land and their labor to uplift yourself? That's extraction. I like to call them the colonial exploiters, or I usually say the colonial governments, or there's a term I would say the colonial, something along the terms of exploiters, but my words are leaving me today because it's the end of the day. Instead of saying the colonial powers, the BBC World Service was created for the BBC colonial government to just broadcast its colonial serving messages to the rest of the world. And so that still stands. So within the BBC World Service, you have what you call language services. There is a BBC Hindi, or BBC Urdu, BBC Swahili, BBC Great Lakes. There's one for the whole of Africa, BBC Africa. And then for French West Africa, there's a BBC Afrique. And what you'll find in all these departments, because I've worked for all of them, is that the reporters and the journalists on the ground and the researchers and maybe the presenters, so the face and the footwork, the legwork, the ones hustling and grinding and sweating and working the long hours, are all from African countries. Either from the diaspora or born and bred in African countries, and struggled their way to immigrate to the UK, either through university or through bursaries or whatever. And but then the editors, the senior producers, those who really set the agenda and mark what we're going to talk about, what is news, what is important, are all white British people. They're all older white men. So how can World Service News ever really reflect the agenda of what people from the Global South really need to hear and talk about if it's British people setting the agenda? So I've worked on teams where all my bosses are white male and all my coworkers, researchers, producers are African women, and we are actively saying on my Twitter, on my Facebook, on my Instagram, whenever I fly back home 4 times a year, spend time with my family and live in the village, this is what's important to us. These are the stories I see. This is what we should talk about. This is the angle that we should take on this story. And your editor is like, no, that does not serve Boris Johnson, so let's just not talk about that. Oh, you know, I really like a rags to riches story. Oh, actually, you know, I really like that story about that really cliche thing about a poor kid who can paint like 5 things with their toes over and over and over again. And then news is saturated with what the white gaze of Black communities when we could talk about what matters to us. So this is why I really feel like everything Marverine said resonates with me, and Benedict as well, with ownership. Diversity is not ownership. Inclusion is not ownership. You can put my face on things, or you can hire me and you can include me, but if I don't have ownership and power and rights to actually set agenda and speak whatever I want to speak, then what's the point? So yeah, we are moving. You know, I'm 28, so I'm a millennial. Yeah, millennials and Gen Zers, we are moving to independent media, to Black-owned media, to African-owned media, and as like a TCK, as what I'm considered. When I moved to the UK, I was obsessed with Guap magazine and Galdem, and I was heavily consuming independent media, and it holds weight for me because I've always been a creative and academic and things like that. So I will look at it and say, you know, let me support my own, and but I do agree heavily with Benedict that the average African or Black person or Asian person, we still have that internalized colonialism where we do value white media above African media. I've been in the same position as Benedict, where I was supposed to interview one of the most famous, if not the most famous today, a Nigerian Afrobeats artist for an African show. And his assistant ran me around for weeks and at the end said, yeah, you're a BBC Africa show? Can we actually get on the BBC London show instead? You know, directly had the audacity to ask that to my face. So I've seen that. And I think, so what is the solution? How do we decolonize? If you care for it, if you have the fight in you, if you have the emotional and physical and financial means and fight in you, claw your way to the top of the BBCs, the CNNs, the traditional media, the news agencies, and actually start to undo and reverse those institutional racist ways, such as, so when you have an editor of a team who's European, who's British, and then your team is a bunch of African reporters, but 1 or 2 of those reporters and presenters are also always British or French or Spanish. I worked on a team for BBC for 3 months, a BBC Africa show for 3 months, where our team of reporters, presenters, researchers was like maybe 5 African women, 2 Europeans, a British guy and a French girl, and we would go into pitching meetings, and us, the African women, would have this beautifully written pitch, very well researched, all our contributors lined up, very critical story, and the editor, I will actually call him name and shame, Nigel Gooing, would sit there and say, yeah, I don't, he always said this one thing, I don't like I don't like sit down interviews. I don't like this. And then right next to us, the French girl would pitch the exact same story and he'd say, good, taken, done. And I've seen very actively within the BBC World Service where older Europeans help younger Europeans. I've gone to the head of BBC Africa, one of the biggest heads of BBC Africa, white dude, freaking Ian Booth, and said, I need training. I'm new. I want to do train this and this and this. And I've heard that you're giving free classes for people who've done all that I've done. And where do I sign up? Oh, we don't do those classes. And then I've gone back to my desk, and right next to me, there is my exact peer, my exact contemporary and everything, a French man, same age, same number of years in BBC, everything, same level of talent and everything, who's also working on BBC Afrique with me. And I asked him, yeah, I went to Ian. He said there are no more classes. And Pierre looks at me and says, I'm enrolled in 3 of those classes. So they're supporting each other. So when we get in those positions, we have to support each other. But I will say that the older generation of African journalists in those big, important positions, because there are 1 or 2, don't help the younger generations. I've seen a few of them actively try to push away my career. And one of them support me here or there, push here or there, help me here or there, but then stop. Because when they had to get, when they're, when you're in your 60s, your 50s, to get where you got as an African, back in the 90s, you went through so much. When you're finally in your position, you have grudges, you're angry, you don't want to help the younger generation. It was only when I worked with a bunch of African journalists who are my age that I built my confidence, that they supported me, that they would plug me, that they would push me. I'm only the journalist I am today because of them. I mean, I worked on BBC Focus on Africa. I used to go home crying every day because my white female boss will yell at me, humiliate me in front of everyone on a daily basis. And her white coworkers will come and say, she's going through a bad divorce. I'm so sorry she's taking that on you. I had a bad day. My cat died. I'm not crying. You don't know because I'm a professional. I come to work. I don't take it out on people. And then others will come and tell me, she's threatened by you because you're African. You speak 6 African languages and you can be on TV one day, but she can't. She'll always just be a producer. That's not an excuse. Why are you working on an African show? Work on a British show. If you're threatened by younger Africans. So we really need more Africans in positions of power at traditional media if we really want to say that traditional media has such a standing with people, so let's get in there. We need those who are willing to change the system. And then we definitely need independent media, and we need to work with, keep pushing out the message towards general people, the general populace, that, this independent media, like Benedict says, does have as much credibility and creativity and goodness as the BBC or whatever. So do support them. So yeah, I think those, Benedict and Margarine really touched on those 2 things are essentially it. Yeah. Sorry for the really I'm clearly very passionate, so I've gone on and on. But yeah, sorry.
I can see the issue close to your heart, and it's good, and I think you kind of connected some of the issues other speakers has mentioned. I think one of the things you mentioned also, Benedict mentioned, is the issue about devaluing the African name or Black name. I don't know if you're suggesting that any company, including our One Africa network, we should remove the name Africa so that you get the value. But I think it's one of the things we need to address. But in terms of tackling, or how can we transform or change narrative, maybe for a better future? I know media has a lot of influence in terms of public perception. Maybe Marvin will know it quite well in terms of I think a couple of years ago, I watched a documentary on Al Jazeera, how like the film industry, the actors they use affect people's mindset, and who's the hero, who's the drug dealer, so those kind of things play in people's mind. And one of the, maybe I don't know if you agree with me, but I don't know, do you agree that the Black Lives Matters or Black Economy Now initiative are likely to push for an impact, or do you agree some of the initiatives being pushed ahead are going to make changes in the coming few years? Marvin, I don't know, you are in the education sector. Do you think also, starting from education, how we teach journalism and moving forward, can it play a bigger part, or it's going to be, what's your thought, and how can we tackle this negative stereotyping of Black and African in the news media?
Yeah, absolutely. It does start with education. And, you know, as we know, we're underrepresented in a lot of industries. So, you know, in HE, I am a rarity as a Black woman leading a journalism department, right? And I'm sure, you know, it's the same across, you know, GCSE, BTEC level, whatever, teaching media and journalism. But where we can get into those positions, you know, we've got to do the best that we can. I'm doing what I can in terms of decolonizing my whole curriculum, you know, finding scholars and books and experts that feed into, you know, the theoretical aspects of the course. Me just standing there as a practitioner is making a change. I have instigated, you know, the whole mindset around equality and diversity in their stories. They go out and they make sure that they are finding stories from communities that are traditionally underrepresented everywhere else. You know, reach out to well, I teach them to kind of what's the word, kind of have a mindset to not be fearful, to be brave, even if they don't understand a community. They must go and ask and go, actually, I don't understand, can you tell me your story, right? So when they go out into the world, they're going to be a better journalist, all being well. And I smile, but I'm a hard taskmaster in the classroom. You know, they will make change, because the industry that I've been through, that Mariama, you're going through, right? That Benedicta, you've been through as well. You know, all of our experiences, you know, those experiences are a snapshot of Black journalists' experiences, you know, over the years and to this present day. We can't have new journalists going out into that environment. The new journalists that are going out there need to be the change. And so, yeah, it does start with media teachers, journalism teachers. Thankfully, at Birmingham City University, you know, I've got a bunch of incredible colleagues who are all teaching, you know, media theory and production, how to use cameras and, you know, everything, right? The lot. We know what this is about. We are actively doing this. So, you know, any young person who wanted to come and study media, you're going to get a bunch of people who are fully invested. And this is Black lecturers, Asian lecturers, white lecturers. We are all invested in making sure that our students are not going to make the mistakes and not be, you know, not run those kind of narrow agendas around content creation. So yeah, education is where it absolutely is as well. And also teach, you know, I'm teaching them about these new independent models, so that actually if after everything I've taught a journalism student, they're like, heck, the industry sounds horrible, I do not want to go into that, I want to do my own thing. I'm teaching them about how to be an entrepreneur. You know, I'm in the middle of, you know, well, I'm almost finishing this module about journalism innovation and entrepreneurship, examining different business models, so that then, you know, when they leave, they can go, you know what, I'm going to freelance, or I'm going to try and set up my own media, and I'm going to try and make it, because I want to counteract or have a, you know, try and shift the kind of poor narratives that are out there now. So you know, it's every educator's job to try and affect change.
Yeah. So do you think the digital economy or remote working, with all these, some of the options that Mariam and Benedict mentioned in terms of news outlet in the digital independent, freelance in the digital outlet, is it likely to disrupt the existing industry incumbent like BBC, ITV? Because now it's offering, like the example you mentioned, some of the reporters or who have left because they have enough followers. If you have 100 or 1 million followers, you can do your own. Is it likely to maybe push for them to rethink? You see, oh, we are losing followers. And
yeah, do you know like I said before, I think earlier, Black Lives Matter has instigated a change. I think you know, and with the advent of Black Pound Day, and you know, that day every month, which is kind of reminding everybody to support anything Black owned, I think it almost feels like Black independent media needs its own PR campaign to insert itself into the Black owned, so that everybody kind of gets over that colonial mentality, like Benedict was saying, like, yeah, Black media, nah, you're all right, you're gonna have to wait because X magazine, Elle, Vogue, Cosmo, whatever, is gonna have more time and you're gonna get this little bit of time. We as independent Black media need to educate our diaspora to the value of what we're doing, because people are unhappy with sectors of mainstream media and newspapers and the rest of it. And if we are offering a solution, if independent media is offering a solution, we need to be saying, we're over here, come and support us. And hopefully, you know, that will make a difference. You know, I think that's really, you know, where things are going to change, because like I said, you know, the traditional organizations they're not really doing the job. They're not in a hurry to do the job. And, you know, Mariam, you were saying about, you know, if you want to claw your way up to the top in those industries, listen, them glass ceilings, boy, they are like bulletproof. You know, they are thick. The glass is thick. They do not want, this is my feeling, my personal feeling, they do not want you there. I know, I'm connected with senior Black executives who've got to a level and they've left because they just can't get any more, and they're left because they're exasperated, right? Or they've been managed out. So I don't know how, you know, it could be another 10 years or whatever. There'll be someone who'll push up there, I'm sure, but it just doesn't feel very hopeful. I don't feel very hopeful about that at the minute. That's
so Melvin, as someone who has a lot of experience, I know the media is heavily regulated by the government, and sometimes, of course, they control, and also there's a lot of monopoly, like B has a lot of stake in so many media, which means they can control quite a lot of out media going out. What media do you think, and I know the media out there is just a wash of so many stories that sometimes crowd our eyesight. Which media do you think someone can rely to?
So which media do you think someone can
rely to for genuine information
or
or
can rely on?
that...
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I think you've got to pick and choose. I think you've really got to pick and choose, because every media outlet has, you know,
they have an agenda. Sometimes they are being steered by certain.
They do, and there are certain reporters. There are some reporters who don't do better jobs than others, and even Black reporters, you know, who are in those spaces get torn down for the way that they report. So I think it's very much about who you trust. Obviously, the BBC is at the top of the global trust list or what have you. You know, when I worked at Sky News, I liked the way that they did things. I was happy with the way that they did things. You know, actually, you know, one of the organisations that I probably know the best is ITN. So they make Channel 4 News, they make Channel 5 News, they make the ITV 6:30 and 10 o'clock news. You know, and that's the kind of national news network. You know, whenever I work with ITN, I think they've always tried to book the trend in terms of, well, they booked the trend first of all by putting Charlene White on at news at 10. You know, a friend of mine, the first ever Black woman to anchor 10 o'clock news in this country. Right? ITN made that move. They hired Claudia Liza Armour to host Channel 5 News again, first ever Black woman. You know, so that they do, I think they're probably the news organisation that cares the most about diversity. And, you know, they, through COVID-19, you know, they surveyed health workers, right, and found out about their experiences in COVID-19 to reveal the extent of racism in the NHS and things like that. You know, it feels to me like they are probably the most, the broadcaster with the most integrity, right? So that's a personal opinion as to who I'd be watching.
So the final question before probably I'll go to Benedict. I think Benedict mentioned it that sometimes if it's a Black or African story, it doesn't get attention. if I was doing something in Birmingham and I want to attract the media, because I know sometimes when you tell them, okay, there's a Black or an African initiative taking place, you even write to them. I think I've written to some of them, but they never turn up, but they are happy to report some other news somewhere else. What would be the best way to disrupt them to attract their attention?
Oh, sorry, go on. I've shut my mouth. It's Benedicta.
Who's the best? Benedict, can you answer that, or also help us to tackle the other ones?
So
the first one is, how can we change the negative stereotype, and then probably you can go to the other.
I think Mavarine just said, I mean, journalism is meant to be objective, right? But if you're reading the Telegraph and then you're reading the Sun and the Guardian, it would be that same story and like just that one person, and you are not going to get the same angles, right? It's you will be reading their version or their interpretation of what that big story is. So if there's an explosion in Africa somewhere, the Guardian will be probably be more sympathetic towards how the situation came about. And then if you're reading it in the Daily Mail, maybe, then it's, oh God, it's their fault. They're always like this. Look at them, Africa, it's not evolved, and so on and so forth. So it's journalism. We were taught when I did my NCCJ training that it's meant to be objective and you're meant to be impartial. But we all know that there's partiality, and we all know that people take sides. And I can't really speak on how these organizations can change, because I'm not dipping my fingers there anymore. But the only way I do it is I make sure I take the right angle when I'm handling African and Black stories. And I'm going back to the point about wording and what we emphasize and what we focus on. With journalism, that's one thing, that's one word, well, that's one of the many words that come up with every single story you're working on, the angle. How do you want to look at it? How are you going to give, what kind of lens? Journalism and media is the window to the world, and we have the power to shape perception and to shape views and to impose opinion to a certain extent. And if you have that type of power, influence, or capability, I think it's just, as an individual, it's just how do I tell it? It's always that one story, and everybody will tell it according to themselves and how they want it to go about. How many times you come back and say, you watch something or you read something in one outlet, and then someone come back and say, oh no, not all the informations were reported. They omitted this or they omitted that so it could meet their agenda. And as Black people, if we have journalists in outlets, in mainstream media outlets, or you have your own organizations, we just have to be careful with the angle, because that's what shapes our story. And that's how we're going to be changing our narrative. We need to reframe the narrative, whether it's through a lens, through a pen, a keyboard. We have to be very careful with that, because that's how it was distorted in the first place. It's the angle that's always been taken against Black people in the UK, whether it's the way Africa's narrative is, the kind of things like Mariama was saying is, oh no, we want these type of stories. Can you give us this? Oh no, you can get the same story. You can get the same story about somebody, who has gone through hell, and you can try and focus on the hell that they went through and keep repeating that type of narrative, or you could talk about what they've overcome. That's one person, because we're all multifaceted, aren't we? We all have different sides to us, and so does our stories, and so does the way that we are. And it's just about focusing on what emphasizing, like what we put emphasis on and what we put our focus on. That is to practitioners, media practitioners, that's to journalists, that's to people in the industry, and that's to those of us who are practicing. And the other side where you spoke about getting our stories out there because maybe we don't get enough attention. Personally, I'm not trying to get anybody's attention like that. I'm not trying to do that. I know how to reach the right audience. It's like with New African Woman, I'm an African woman, so I know, and I speak to a lot of African women, and I interact with them. I know what they want, and we discuss what we read. We know what, and so it means if I have something to put out there, I know I can put it out there to African women in the right way, and I would interact with them. I'm not really interested in audiences that I don't really have a connection with. So if you're looking, because if you're an African, every single media outlet has African section, right? For us, like BBC Africa, CNN Africa, CNGT, and I think that the Chinese one, you know, everybody has that. So if that's what your main target is and you want to get your story out there to, you know, to Africans who follow mainstream media, yes. But there's also a lot of African outlets out there that will take on your story because you are an African and they value who you are. So I don't know how I can get an African story into a non-African audience, unless there's, you know, it's just, that's just not how I do things, or I see it happening.
That's a good point. Actually, while I'm still on you, there's a question that has been raised about from Jessica. Can I ask?
Oh, hi, Jess.
Can I ask what people?
Vicarage? I think I'm saying her
Yes,
surname.
Jess Vicarage. The question is, what do you think about the outpourings from the employees of OK Africa? I don't know if you know, I'm not very close to
with the women and the mistreatment from the CEO.
Yes.
That happens all the time, and within African media, a lot of African media. I mean, Africans and Black folks, we still have our own internal issues, and I think sexism is one of them, and that's what played out there. I think with that one, it's just, to be honest, OK Africa is owned by 2 Jewish women, and they wanted an African face to represent the brand, and they put a man there, a man who may not have the best character, but it's a Black face, and it needs to be there to represent a Black audience, you know, to attract a Black audience. And I feel like, I think that's what the strategy was. I know quite a few women who worked there in New York, and they're brilliant journalists, and, you know, they do great work. But I think it's just, it comes from up, right? If it was Black women who owned OK Africa, whatever has been happening wasn't going to be happening for that long, and the person wouldn't have gotten away with it. But it, you know, a token CEO, so I yeah, sorry Jess, I can't articulate it better because I'm not in the organization, but I just felt like if they had Black ownership and they weren't looking at, you know, I think his name is Obi, I'm not sure, but if they weren't looking at him as in, oh, he is our representative and we need him there, and he's connected to the Black industry within America and the diaspora, and he's, you know, he's going to give us validation or credibility because he's a Black man. I think that's the reason why a lot of the things happen, is because it's not coming from actual Black people, and they just thought, as long as we've got somebody Black there that's in charge, we can keep going, but it's fired back. And I think they need to select their Blacks better.
Oh, okay. So it sounds quite very control. We just have a few minutes left, and I was going through some of the questions, but look, some of them has been addressed through the discussion. But one of the discussion has been going on is probably you can use it as part of the wrap up. If you are a young person or a journalist entrepreneur looking to penetrate or break through the media industry, especially from the BME community, what will be your advice? What are your thoughts? Probably if I start with Melvin, who has extensive experience, what would be the key takeaway to say if you are interested to be in this industry, or you are starting your career or your media company? What would be the key takeaway to say these are the best guidance I will give you, especially you are also in education, educating young journalism and the reporters? What are the key takeaway would you recommend?
Given that I was someone, you know, when I started out, I wanted to be in these institutions, because when I was a teenager, teenager, there was no internet, okay? You wrote a letter to an organization and you asked for work experience or whatever. The game has totally changed now. So the internet has, technology has meant that, this is your television camera, right? You can do all sorts of everything, and social media has opened up a global world, for youngsters to be able to access. So, my ethos is exactly as I teach my students. My course is mobile first. We teach them how to use these to produce media, how to produce their own media, and also how to operate within media organizations. So I think, if you want to get in, you get yourself skilled in whatever way that is, and you can skill yourself, even using YouTube as the encyclopedia of the world, and teach yourself how to use packages to edit, right? And there are free, sources of editing software and stuff as well. Skill yourself in whatever way that is. So teach yourself, or get onto a course, or get onto an apprenticeship. Experience some of those organizations and see how you cope in there if that's what you want to do. But equally, don't close your mind to creating your own content. Create your own content, do your own thing, build your own audiences, build your own communities. Don't wait for anybody's permission to do anything. Think about clever solutions as to how to do things, particularly COVID-19, but you've got your camera kit in your hand. And just to empower yourself with the knowledge of how this industry works, and there's plenty of interviews and, this session in itself, everyone's got an understanding now, an innate understanding of what we know, how this industry works. I think as long as you know how an industry works, you know what to do to try and get into it, to try and change things, or to try and counteract the kind of the poor practices of some.
Yeah. Benedict, thank you so much, Marvin, for that summary. Benedict, what's your your key takeaways, especially from your experience working in various media and engaging various stakeholders? If anybody was going to build a career or start to go into independent journalism like you, what's your recommendation, or what the key advice?
For newcomers, for those who just want to get into the industry?
Both for those one who want to get into, or the early careers, or those one who are already penetrating, because they don't want to get wounded like most of you have been wounded. So they can learn from you and then be able to navigate some of those complexities.
I think I think a lot of the time, especially, I don't know, maybe I was just vulnerable, or I mean, you're young and you're excited to get into a new industry, or you've just discovered what you want to do in life. But I think you just have to have your own individual objective and be firm with it and be unapologetic, because it is an industry that's going to start making you apologetic, especially if you get a backlash with an opinion piece, or you write a or video or whatever work you do, and it's, it brings a different voice or a narrative or a story, because that's what it is. We want to change things, and you can't be scared to do that, because you are going to meet status quos, right? You're going to come into an industry there where everything is already set, and and you're not expected to ruffle any feathers or anything like that. And if we're saying we need change, then you have to come with a mindset to bring about change, because you are going to be asked to tone down. You are going to be told that that's not the direction they are taking. And you have to be mentally prepared to say, actually, no, think about your individual aims, what you came in for, what kind of stories you want to tell, and how you want to tell it, and how you want it to be received, because that's what leaves a lasting legacy. Yeah. There's been pieces where we've done, and I think we get millions of views, and people are like, oh, wow, I knew, but I didn't know it this much. Or I knew, but I've never heard it this way. And you have to be prepared to come and do that. Maybe it's the same story again, but you're bringing in a different angle, and be just prepared to say, no, I'm not apologetic. This is how it should be told, and I'm prepared to tell it this way. Otherwise, I'm walking away. And there's so much resources right now, like digital wise. There is no, I mean, I don't know about everybody else, but TV is not something that we have time to sit down and watch every day. TV is not, even radio. So digital is everything, and the resources are at your fingertip, right? Websites can be accessed from all corners of the world. Videos can be watched if you don't have a direct platform for yourself on social media. You know, you can create your own audience. You can create your own content and build a community, like Marvarine was saying, and don't shy away from it, because we need more media, we need more storytelling, we need more ownership, we need agency, and we have the power more than ever to do it right now with the new technology. And we shouldn't, and another thing that I've realized, especially from a lot of African diaspora and in the continent, or sometimes just, you know, generally Black people, it's like, you're not, like, there's been times where like, oh yeah, I don't do the social media thing. Utilize it. It's an audience, it's an actual audience. They're not on telly. I mean, I don't know when it was. I think it was about 2 years ago. I read that Coca-Cola sort of cut 30% or 50% of their TV ads expenditure, and they moved it to digital. They moved it to social media. They moved it to YouTube. So they moved it to web. So you could think the big shots is the newspapers and the TV, and no, it's actually online. It's actually digital. You know, learn the skills. Apart from journalism, every other skill, whether it's video editing, with directing, I've learned it all by myself. You know, I just gave myself time to learn, and the resources are there. So, and also just make sure you're as versatile as possible. I mean, there's people, I've had friends who say, oh, I've applied for this journalism job, and they wanted to know how many Twitter followers I have. You know, those things are coming into equation now. It's not just being able to tell a story or sticking to one format. They want you to be like a multi-purpose journalist and stuff like that. So try to learn and have as much skill as you can. And yeah, and just don't be apologetic. Be unapologetic and be ready to ruffle the feathers, as long as you're doing it in the right way. I'm not saying you should come and be radical and just be, you know, antisocial, but it's just saying, you know, putting your foot down, because you're not going to be in charge. A lot of the time, you're not going to be in charge of the kind of stories you're allowed to tell. And you have to make sure you're prepared to put your foot down and say, actually, this is what I'm going to tell. This is my people. I want to, you know, I'm Congolese. If I'm going to tell a Congolese story, I am the first person that's going to tell you how it's going to be told, not a non-Congolese person, you know, not a non-Black person. And we have Black people being told how to tell Black stories. It's mad. So,
you are right. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, but the key takeaway from you probably is 2-3 things. One, of course, change needs bold decision and action. Second is, of course, the individual need to be out there. We all need to be in the social media, build our presence, experience, of course, try everything. And Mariam, I know we are running out of time. What's your key summary takeaway, in addition to what has been mentioned by the other two speakers, by Benedict and Marvin? Mariam.
Yeah, I guess the baton that comes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, I was saying the baton that comes with the answering last is that most has been said. I say for myself, my peers, I've just moved from BBC to CNN and Vice. I'm also running my own podcast, and I know my peers, all who are within my generation, are all African, all in the industry, have a wealth of new tactics that we're using to come in to start our own things. The first advice is get rid of imposter syndrome. If you can if you're in the BBC or wherever, no need to have imposter syndrome. I know it's the first thing that everyone suffers from, but you don't need to have it, because there are people in your position or higher than you who don't know what they're doing or are not as great. And they have just this entitlement that comes with the fact that you belong to a race where no one's ever said no to you. You get everything you want. So just know that if you're there, it's because your excellence has been seen and it wants to be ripped from you. So hold on to it and don't have imposter syndrome about it. The second would be, I would say, very similar to something that Benedict had said, in the sense of find out who you are, what you're interested in, and really stick to it, thoroughly narrow down in it. So once you know what you're into in journalism, and it can be many versatile range of, a huge versatile range of things, as journalists are, and that's why we're in this industry, really stick to hold down your roots in all of them and push as far as you can go in all of them, and don't let anybody try to, naysayers try to push you off your course. Yeah, those are the two things. And of course, I think with my generation coming in, where we want to do so many weird and new, wacky, different things that can be seen as niche, or there is no market for it, or it doesn't exist, or who would like this? What do you mean you want to do radio, visual radio? What is that? What is electric podcast? Da, da, da. You might think because it doesn't already exist, let me not do it. That's all the more reason to do it. That's a new way that someone is consuming news that's exciting, that no one's heard of, and then you're a pioneer in it, and you struggle through it. But when it really kicks off and it pulls through, then you're huge. You're the next founder of whatever. So I know a lot of new journalists or people coming into media, the thing that they want to do, they think it's too out of whack, out of left field. And I think that's even the more reason to do it. Lastly, surround yourself with other journalists who get you and see your vision, and who will be your safe space when you face microaggression in the office or what have you, and push and motivate each other. Because for me, I can say my first couple experiences, I was broken by people who were actively trying to break me. And it was only within finding my safe space of journalists that I really rebuilt. I mean, we have a WhatsApp group where we're constantly sharing, things that are the answer to this question. So, but I run out of time. So before I list all of them, maybe I can share them on LinkedIn. Next time, maybe if I have more space to share. But yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Actually, you just mentioned it's important that we continue to build a support system and network, people that you are in the same industry or doing the same. So it's like an ecosystem. So you can share ideas, support each other on your way up or across. So it's been amazing having everyone. Unfortunately, I've taken extra 70 minutes, but I've learned a lot. I feel empowered. I think I might start considering a career in journalism. So watch the space. You might see my article soon, or somewhere in BBC or ITV, anywhere. Also myself disrupting the media industry. So thank you so much. It's been amazing. The discussion has been recorded, and we are going to write a summary report. So we will share it across with you in terms of what has been the key highlights and things like that. And please continue to support One Africa Network. And we'll invite you in the future also to come and share more how the industry is moving, and continue to support the community moving forward as we work to recover from the COVID-19 and the recession also. I hope it doesn't go to depression at the same time. So there are so many challenges ahead of us, and I would encourage people to work together, support each other, patronize our work and everybody. So thank you so much, and it's been amazing having you, and have a good evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Honored to be here. Thanks, Eugene.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.